Welcome back to another edition of Rock Forever. We got a very special guest. You know him as the co-founder, lead guitarist, and songwriter for the multi-million selling group, Mr. Big, and the breakthrough group, Racer X. Please welcome Paul Gilbert.
I'm going to say hello with a pig scratch. There we go. Now I feel ready.
I love it. I love it. So yeah, man, you're up in Oregon. That's awesome, man. The West Coast is so fertile. I spent early years helping launch the first Van Halen album and many more up in the Seattle, Vancouver market. So, you know, Washington, British Columbia, Oregon, California, what an amazing coast.
It's springtime. The trees are happy. And hopefully this COVID thing will be over at some point. We can go outside and breathe the air mask free. But in the meantime, we'll do the best we can.
Yeah, man. I love how green it is up there. You know, you put up with a little rain here and there, and then it pays off when it's springtime.
I like the rain. I've got no problem with the rain. That's all good.
Okay. Well, it's one and the other. Well, take us back, because I know you sprung out of a Pittsburgh suburb back in the day and started playing music at 6, which I can relate to. Who was it that spurred you to, you know, ask your parents or whoever to get a damn guitar?
I would say, well, originally it was my parents' record collection. They had Beatles albums, they had albums by The Who and the Rolling Stones. And so I don't, you know, my ear was not sophisticated when I was a little kid. So I couldn't really tell what was what. I could sort of tell there was singing, and then there was this exciting sound behind it. So I didn't really focus in on what the guitar was. So really I wanted to be a singer. And then as years went by, you know, I thought the guitar looked cool. So I kind of wanted one just to, you know, so I could look like the Beatles. But then I think it was when Led Zeppelin, when I first started listening to Jimmy Page, that I noticed the guitar parts. And Jimmy had such good riffs, you know, like the first one comes to mind is the Rover, you know. That's such a mean riff, and he had all the cool bends, you know. So that's sort of, you know, what Jimmy took from the blues players. That I always dug that, and that was it. And of course, you know, after I started playing guitar, you know, I tried to copy what I could from Jimmy and from the Beatles records. And then Van Halen came out, and that was, you know, blew everybody's mind. And so, you know, I'll stop talking there for now. But that was the beginning of the Beatles, Led Zeppelin, Van Halen.
Yeah, I know it's just an ongoing adventure of listening to sounds, creating sounds, you know, and it's always gone back and forth over that pond, you know, the Atlantic. We always seem to have, the Americans influenced the Brits, and then the Brits influenced us, and then we go back and forth.
Well, I didn't really pay attention to who was from what country, at least early on. You know, I just had the record, and I did think, I remember the accents. Like once in a while on TV when I was a kid, you could hear a short interview with one of the Beatles, and you know, Ringo would be talking like this, and he had this certain way of saying things. And then, or you hear like an interview with, you know, Led Zeppelin guys, and he'd be like, "Yeah, we went on tour," and everything sounded sort of more sophisticated with the British accent. But you know, I didn't know the history until much later. You know, it was more just, you know, trying to track down records and learn things. And I'm still not sure where Foghat is from. I don't know if they're American or English, what they are. So it's still British, it's still mysterious.
Yeah, they're a British band, you know, with Lonesome Dave and all that, but they've got more Americans in the band now with their singer and slide guitarist. So Roger Earl.
It's good to be flexible, I suppose.
Yeah, they're bi-coastal or bi-country wise. But you know, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say it's funny. I use the slow ride. If this Foghat, they use a slide. You know, the guitar player like. You know, he was using the slide all the time, and I didn't know that. So when I would learn that, I would do it with bending. And they're like, 1, 2, 3. and that'd be more like the bending thing. And I used to make my students do all the time. I would say, like, before I show you any shred thing, you got to play Slow Ride, just to show me that you've got like some kind of musical sensibility, and you can hang on to that. Once you pass that test, then we can then I'll unlock the door of the quick stuff.
Yeah, that's amazing. Now coming out to LA in '84, I mean, you got the Olympics coming to LA. I mean, it's booming. MTV's in full flight, GIT, Guitar Institute of Technology, Hollywood Boulevard. I mean, talk about what a culture shock that was, and what was the greatest thing when you got there?
Well, I would say that the only, like, I had been to New York because I grew up in Pennsylvania, like, the eastern part of the states. So I'd been to New York City a couple times with my parents. I'd been to Washington D.C. quite a few times because my cousins lived there, and I thought that LA was going to be much more like crazy people walking around, like mohawks, or people with rainbow dyed hair or whatever. And it really, at least where I was, I mean, I was right in Hollywood, and it was pretty. I mean, it was relatively normal. Compared to DC anyway. DC, you would see the Mohawks, or at least the one a couple times I was there. So I was like, no, this is pretty laid back. And that was the thing. It's like LA was kind of people that were just laid back, a slower pace, and I kind of felt like a predator dropped in among the the rabbits or something. 'Cause, being raised on the East Coast, I had a certain work ethic and kind of hardness, growing up in that part of the country, and then I come out ready to just tear it up, and I did. And I mean, people in LA work hard, but the overall vibe is kind of laid back. And I learned phrases like overall vibe, which I never would have used in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I mean, you're coming out here, and LA is all spread out. Unlike Manhattan, it goes straight up and down. LA, even the heart of Hollywood, it's like 1, 2 floors. It's not that tall, and everybody's in convertibles. There's palm trees everywhere, so everybody's can work at their own pace. But obviously, it was a great time for music. What a bunch of incredible bands that were cropping up out of LA. I always say that Van Halen birthed, the late '70s birthed all these, Van Halen wannabes. Everybody was coming to LA. They wanted a record deal, and tell us about putting Racer X together, because obviously, a trailblazing group, some great albums in there, really set you up, and you still revisit. So talk about, how Racer X all came together.
Well, back when I was in Pennsylvania, I started sending tapes of my playing to Mike Varney, who was an independent record producer specialized in guitar playing. And Mike, he responded really positively. He liked my playing. He was very encouraging. He was also extremely critical of my songwriting. He wouldn't hold back. He'd be like, "Man, that's the worst song I ever heard. I can't. Are you serious? Is that a joke?" He'd really tear into me with my songs, but he always liked my playing. And so I worked on my songwriting a lot to try to try to avoid the abuse. And by the time I was ready to come out to LA, Mike was starting to give me a better review of my songs, to the point where he said, like, he said, "Hey, if you can put a band together, we'll do a full record." So that was really exciting to me. I mean, I didn't really have a concept of the difference between an indie record and a major label. So I just thought a record was a record, and I, thought I was going to be a star. So, and Mike was very helpful. He hooked me up with other musicians, but I ended up finding just about everybody through the school, because I was going to GIT, and that was connected to a bass school and a drum school. So that's where I found the original drummer of Racer X, Harry Chaucer. He was a student, and then John Already was a bass player. He was a student there as well. We found Jeff Martin. That was recommended through Mike Varney, because Mike was working with Jeff and some other projects. And then we did the first album that way, and then the next after that, I started teaching at MI, and one of my first students was Bruce Bouillet, and he played so well that I thought, man, rather than have him be the competition, I'll have him join the team. So he joined Racer X, and we became a 2 guitar band. But I met him at GIT as well.
Yeah, what a great time. You had the country club out in Reseda, you got the Roxy and the stuff on the Strip, the Troubadour. I mean, it was a poppin' time. There was a a lot of energy, and obviously people were, receptive to what you guys were doing. But that led to Mr. Big, Billy Sheehan, and you're ready to take it to another level where a bigger focus on the songs, better production, talk about the highlights of the Mr. Big run.
Yeah, I think we spent about the same amount of time on the first Racer X album as we did getting the snare tone on the first Mr. Big album. It was I was kind of panicked. I remember, the first day, our first couple days in the studio with Mr. Big, I was looking at the producer and going like, "Are we okay? Like, we're just, things moving kind of slow here. Are they going to kick us out?" He's like, "Oh no, we're gonna be in the studio for 2 months." And I couldn't believe it, because Racer X, if we got a week to do the whole thing, we were really lucky. Um, so I got used to that luxury, and yeah, it was. I mean, Billy was a big hero of mine. I used to go see him play when he was in the band called Talus, and I was, I loved how Billy played in Talus. So that was, and of course he'd played with David Lee Roth, and and then it it connects to people who are in the industry. Uh, it it felt like a bigger deal then, because there was no YouTube, there was no way to get your music to the world other than this one pipeline, which was getting a record deal, and that meant getting a manager, and it was this certain system you kind of had to follow, and so that's what everybody was doing. And Mr. Big seemed like the way to do that. So besides it being great, musicians to play with, Eric, the singer, had a really high-powered manager, a guy named Herbie Herbert, who had managed Journey and Santana, and so it looked like it couldn't fail, and it didn't. It went pretty well.
Yeah, absolutely. Great stuff. And, instrumental albums, it's hard to believe 16 solo albums now, but I guess to you, it's just business as usual. You're always creating instrumental music, and, you got to get it out. So talk about, Werewolves of Portland. I know I love the title, little homage to our friend from the past, but, obviously this is a whole nother level for you. Argument about pie. I mean, what do you feel you've most accomplished creatively on this album?
One thing, I think I did something no one's ever done before, which is I made an instrumental song with a lyric video. Uh, which seems to be impossible. Like, how can an instrumental song have lyrics? But that's how I wrote the songs. I actually wrote them as if there was going to be singing. Because that I like writing that way, and it gives me a good structure to work with. It tends to make the melodies more melodic if you kind of envision them as being sung by a human voice. But my guitar playing is much better. It has much fewer limitations than my voice has. I've got my voice is what it is. I can sing a little bit, but it's I've had a chance to try it out with my early solo records, and I got frustrated. I couldn't hit the high notes. Live I couldn't really hit stuff as consistently as I would like, and my guitar playing is just a lot more reliable, and I feel like the more I work on a melody, the better it gets. Whereas, the more I work on a melody with my voice, I just wear out the muscle and end up wanting to do something else. So it combined the two things that I love. I love melodies and I love singing, but it allowed me to do it with a tool that's a much more reliable tool, and that I'm able to still be really expressive with. And so the song like Argument About Pie is it was written as really a vocal song, right? You can never get in an argument about pie. You can never get in an argument about pie. Come on, man. And you go on and on and on. And then, I'd figure out how to play that on the guitar. And the kind of vibrato I can get is just so much groovier than what I can sing. So that's sort of the main thing. The other thing, of course, is that I played all the instruments, and that was just to solve the problem of social distancing and the lockdown. How can I make a record and not breathe the same air as a band? So in a way, it gave me an excuse to play drums, which I love doing. Drums are such a blast.
Yeah, the one man band, man, drums, guitar, and then add a little bass. And I love the idea of writing as you are singing, and then take the vocals and lyrics out. That's amazing. Well,
Well,
16.
the way I tested it out was by, going through other, like, my singing heroes. If I listen to Steven Tyler, and he's, the Aerosmith song, like, what's that one? That's the Steven Tyler line. Goodbye to South Carolina. And I can't. If I try to sing it with my voice, I sound like Mickey Mouse. But if but if I play on guitar, I can put something. I can put some strength behind it. And so I started learning Steven Tyler vocal lines. I learned Janis Joplin, like Mercedes Benz. Oh Lord, won't you buy me? And I go. And that's such. I mean, imagine me trying to sing Janis Joplin. There's no way. No way. I don't have a fighting chance with my singing voice. But with guitar, I can connect to it a little more. So it's really a joy, and I sort of hone my skills by learning, stuff from my vocal heroes, and then I can bring it into play with my own writing.
Well, that's amazing. We congratulate you on your 16th album. Everybody needs to go check out paulgilbert.com. Get the album coming up real soon, Werewolves of Portland. And go check out that lyric video right now, man. Argument about pie. And consider trying to do that. What an amazing time. Paul, thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you. That was a blast. And if you're a guitar player, check out my online guitar school at ArtistWorks, which has been keeping me busy through this whole lockdown. It's really kept me sane to be able to continue to communicate with people and stay busy, thinking about guitar.